most yoga practitioners and teachers and Ayurveda people something about Kundalini, as I mentioned, because I think it's very useful information and creates also a good metaphor for all of the ways in which we overemphasize Agni and diminish the Soma. And so most yoga people, Ayurveda people are familiar with Kundalini. Kundalini is described as a fiery, serpentine capacity for spiritual growth, seated at the base of the spine, a capacity or a spiritual process which moves in a fiery way, in a purifying way, ascending up the spine in the subtle body. What is done in the yoga world is a lot of stimulation of the Kundalini, a lot of emphasis on driving Kundalini upward through fiery processes, fiery pranayama practices and asana practices and contemplative practices and so on. What is not known is the Soma, the consort of Kundalini, which ascends up, which aspires up in a purifying and heating way as a form of Agni. The consort of Kundalini Shakti is the Soma. The Soma is described as being seated at the top of the spinal cord, or described as being in the deep center of the head, or sometimes described above the head as the 9th chakra. And the Soma is meant to pour down. The Soma nourishes. The Soma expands, swells, and protects the whole subtle body, including all of them that influences the physiology and the mind and emotions, but also specifically the Soma is associated with the Sushumna Nadi. That is the channel in which Kundalini Shakti rises. It's understood in the ancient tradition, this piece has been lost now, that before Kundalini is encouraged upward, the Sushumna should be prepared with Soma. So the Soma should be cultivated and expanded. The Soma, which rains down like nectar, it is described in the Shiva Samhita. The Soma in the head rains down a moon like ambrosia, and it pours down and it nourishes and prepares and protects the Sushumni and the whole body as preparation for Kundalini to come up. When this is done, then the process of Kundalini, or any spiritual process, which is a naturally fiery, transformational, purifying process, that spiritual process doesn't wreck the body, doesn't disturb the nervous system and thus the mind, doesn't cause disturbance in life, but moves the Kundalini process, or the spiritual process takes place in a natural, easeful, almost undetectable, joyful, blissful way. And it moves in such a way that in fact remains. It doesn't just come up and then go down, stimulate something and then diminish again, because it is constantly nourished by the Soma raining down. Also, you don't really have to stimulate a Kundalini process or a spiritual process when there is a fullness of Soma. I describe it like this. If you put a delicious pie on the table, you don't have to then drag people to the table to eat the pie. The people come to devour the pie naturally, and the people don't go hungry. They remain happy and blissful and undisturbed, having eaten something nourishing and delicious. So like that, when the Soma nourishes the system, nourishes the Sushumna, Kundalini naturally rises in order to partake of that nectar, of that ambrosia. This is the natural order of things that has been largely forgotten in the yoga world. I'll say that the Ayurveda people already have this known to them, because it is understood in Ayurveda that, for example, we don't do a purification process without a natural nutritive preparation process. We nourish and prepare the system, the body and the mind first, and then we do purification second. But the only reason we do purification then is for what Ayurveda people will know as rasayana, so that we can then re-nourish, stabilize, nutrify, love up the system. The only reason for purification or for Agni is for the purpose of Soma. But before we bring in Agni, we also have to nourish and protect with Soma. So Agni is meant to be a fire that is alighted within a lot of Soma, before Agni Soma, during Agni Soma, after Agni Soma. Another metaphor that I use for this when I teach